Welcome to Truth Be Told About Going Wild. I'm your host, Robert Hensley, and this is the podcast inspired by the principles of personal rewilding. Today I want to talk a little bit about the rewilding mindset. Like anything, any practice that we enter into, personal rewilding requires some intent. We need to want to change, want to reconnect with nature, want to establish that deep connection to the natural world. We think about the 4 pillars of personal rewilding, which we've talked about in the past, which are connecting to the wild self, aligning ourselves with wild rhythms, taking wild action, and honoring the wild ancestors. And in each of those pillars, we are tasked with certain opportunities, let's call them that, opportunities to make changes, to reconnect, to find pathways for ourselves to rewild. How do we take advantage of that? How do we make that happen? Again, it's not going to happen if we don't want to. We can read a book, we can listen to a podcast, we can go to a workshop, but unless we really have a desire to step into each of those pillars and do the work, we're not going to be rewilded. And that's okay. Some people may enter into the idea of rewilding, think about this practice from a point of view of maybe it's simply the mental and physical benefits that come with spending time outdoors, which is a huge part of rewilding, right? I like to refer to those as the side effects. Those are the things that happen just because that's the way that science works. That's the way that we are designed. But there are all of these other things that happen or that can happen through rewilding, but we have to be in a place to want that to happen. And that is, again, establishing that mindset. And who are the people who tend to have that mindset? The people maybe who are feeling alone. Maybe they lack a sense of place, a sense of belonging. Those people who are experiencing eco rage and eco sadness, despair, people who are looking at the world around them and really have no idea how we as a species got to this point, and how do we get back. Those people who are feeling as if they have more love and care to give than what they're putting out into the world. Those people who maybe care a little bit more about stewardship. Those are the people who tend to be able to get into this mindset or set the intent that they want to connect with the natural world, that they want a deep relationship with nature. And it's okay if that's not the path that you are taking. Even again, if you are just reading about it because it sounds interesting, but you are more interested in maybe just this idea of, being able to walk in the woods and come home and feel better about yourself. If you are, maybe struggling with an illness and you want to strengthen your immunity, and you decide that the best way to do that is to spend 2 hours a week in nature, walking in, pine groves, taking in the scent, hoping that kickstarts, the native immune system. And that's all well and good. I think that when we talk about personal rewilding, or when I talk about personal rewilding, let's take it from there. When I talk about personal rewilding for myself, it is with an intent to have a deeper, meaningful relationship with nature, to connect to my inner wild child, right? I always talk about my wild being as being that little kid running around in dirty overalls, playing in the mud and building things out of sticks and, staring up through the trees and loving the clouds in the sky, that I want to have a better understanding of the natural cycles of the universe and how those affect us. I want to be able to take action in my community to make things happen, for the better, right? Always with the intent of doing something for good. And I want to find ways of honoring the ancestors. And that's not just my personal ancestors, my genetic line, my bloodline, but all of those beings who came before me. There is this wealth of wisdom and knowledge and things that we lose from groups of people who were here before us. And how do we honor their lives and what they learned and what they passed down for generations? So yeah, I mean, so there are things for me that are very intentional. And along the way in my studies, I also found that, meditation and journaling and some of these other things lead us down that path or help me get further down that path. And that with those things come certain mental, physical, and spiritual benefits. And beyond that, as I start to take that outside to develop that kind of rewilded relationship, I suddenly am gleaning even more benefits just from that time spent in nature. And I think for me, my goal has always been to help other people find their own path and for them to take that as far as they want. So whether that leads to, a regular practice of walking a couple of times a week in the woods, or if that becomes, wanting to go out and camp and spend more quality time in nature, if that leads to gardening, if that leads to, stewardship, taking ownership of, a local plot or a community garden, or, if that leads all the way to, activism, where suddenly you've, joined a couple of organizations and you're working for a movement. However far that is, I want to be able to help people achieve those goals and go as far as they want. And again, part of that is understanding the mindset and where we have to be to get to what we want. So yeah, so that is a huge part of what personal rewilding is for me. And what I hope that as people are listening to this podcast and who have visited my website and who, maybe have read my ebook, or who are looking for additional information or who are writing me and asking questions, I'm hoping that I am able to provide them with what they need, again, to step off the sidewalk and onto a path through the woods. And for me, that's my goal. So I want to say that I appreciate your listening, and I hope that I can answer more of your questions and give you more things to think about, as a person, as a beautiful, connected being of the universe. And yeah, if you have questions or comments, concerns, you'd like to know more about rewilding or what I'm working on specifically, please feel free to visit my website at www.rhnaturereconnect.com. That's all together, rhnaturereconnect.com. And remember, there are 3 opportunities each week for new content from the Truth Be Told family of podcasts on the Club Paranormal channel on YouTube. That's Tony Sweet on Fridays with the original Truth Be Told, Bonnie Burkert on Wednesdays with Truth Be Told Transformation, and of course Truth Be Told About Going Wild every Monday. And all of those shows go live at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 Eastern on their respective days. So, thanks again for listening, and until next time.